पे चलते साए वो ही ढलते ढलते दिल में जो कुछ था वही होठों पे आने लगा चाहता है वो भी मुझको बादल बताने लगा कर मेरा इंतजार मेरा बिछड़ाया मेरा बिछड़ाया कर मेरा इंतजार मेरा बिछड़ाया मेरा बिछड़ाया
It makes a big difference when you have a real guitar player, right? Yeah?
Woo!
That is the phenom, Mr. Zawar Jaffrey from Orange County.
Mr. Zawar Jaffrey!
Is it okay if we introduce you as someone from Orange County instead of LA?
I think so. I think
There's a big
that's-
difference between LA and Orange County.
But you're not really from LA, are you?
Yeah, Torrance is part of LA.
We were going to talk about this in the last episode, but I held off.
No, I said I was from LA.
So I'm neither from LA or Orange County. And I was going to mention that the reason why I decided to choose, or I wanted to talk about Faraz Anwar in the beginning,
Yeah,
in the first episode, is because he's such an underdog story,
yeah,
and he's so not recognized.
yeah.
And that's exactly what my hometown is, Rancho Cucamonga, California.
Interesting.
And also, may I say, Karachi compared to the rest
Well,
of
incidentally, Strings is not an underdog story. It's more of a longevity story. Because this is first generation band we're talking about.
That's interesting, but I feel like they kind of were, though, right? I mean, they came out with their Sarkiye Ye Bahar, and
They did, but if you go and listen to the first two albums, you'll see in production level, in music composition,
it was sophisticated.
it was not very sophisticated.
It was not.
It was not, and they were literally like playing like kids. And still,
So that's what I mean. It was an underdog story.
it was no. But then they came back hard when they came back in when they released Dur,
Dur.
which was probably a good 7-8 years after.
99, no, even more.
Really?
I want to say Sarkiye Ye Bahar was released in 88, 89.
Yeah. No, Serkiye was second album. Serkiye was probably 92 or 91.
Right, that
Right?
makes sense.
So the first album
Dur-
must have been like around 89, 90.
Maybe. Dur was in 99, and that's when I moved back
Yeah.
to Pakistan.
And it
And
was.
I remember it was like for 6 months, it was like the only thing any of us talked about in school.
But it was such a brilliant comeback, man.
It really was.
It was because the industry had matured at that time. Everything
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Back then, even like. I know they probably, in the cassettes it used to say EMI,
Yeah.
but it didn't sound like these songs were recorded in EMI.
Yeah.
It's still very strong songs. Some of the songs were really strong.
You know what? And also now come to think of it, they really pushed the envelope
Yeah.
because at that time Junoon was like at its peak, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they come with these like, different songs of like, Oh Jaane Wale.
Yeah. That was in Dur, bro.
Jaane Jaane. That's what I mean. Is that like it was a very
Yeah. Dark.
slow sort of like rock ballad kind
Yeah.
of thing, right? I mean, and we weren't really seeing that in Pakistan.
We
at
weren't
that
really
time.
seeing that.
Yeah.
They do have a distinct sound.
They do. It's
Right?
beautiful. Well, I mean, let's ask the man who just played that beautiful.
Ask a music expert.
I'm not an expert
When
on this
was the
stuff.
first time you were? Now you are much younger than me and Ahmad, right?
Yeah,
Like, I wouldn't go that. Okay.
I mean,
Well, we call him a young phenom.
yeah. I guess the first thing I remember is just like the songs that you guys would play for them whenever we'd hang out in our gatherings and stuff. But other than that, I remember like it was that time when Dish Network Group started to take over in America.
Oh right, yeah, that was a
So
revolution itself.
Yeah, so you're getting like PTV and Geo and ARY all up, but then at the same time, in between like breaks when they didn't have any programming, you'd start to see these music videos take
Yeah.
up.
That's right.
That was like a commercial break when you just put
Yeah.
music videos
Yeah.
on.
Which would probably be the best part of their programming anyway. But
No, and they did have some dedicated channels. Like ARY had its
Yeah.
own like music
Yeah,
channel.
Yeah.
It was spelled MUZIQ.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to throw that out there.
They had that, but
Yeah.
I guess it was at that time in the early 2000s when Dhani had come out recently, I think. And they had so many good singles off that. So it was like
Right.
Anjane Kyun and then Sonia.
Oh, yeah, that was a nice song too.
And then
I forgot about that
Dur.
one.
I think Dur was on that album too.
On Dhani? Was it like a remix or something?
Something of that nature, yeah. But one of those things was just like they had the music videos for that all taking off. So any of the strings intake that I was getting was usually through those music videos where you sing Bilal Maqsood and Faisal Kapadia just all up in like a fish island singing, and you have all these types of different characters that are acting crazy and everything.
No, this is immediately before the YouTube era. Because YouTube era kind of killed albums, right? I mean, do you guys agree with that? Or
It did.
For me, it did.
But you know, it did disseminate
Yeah.
the culture a lot more. Though,
It did.
Right?
So now,
I mean, I remember like being able to catch up in 2010 with like UFO and Youth Records.
right.
And I wouldn't have been able to do that outside of YouTube.
But I'm talking about
frankly.
like back in those days, in the 90s especially, when I would get a cassette tape or a
Yeah.
CD, if you were rich
That was an
enough to-
event in itself, wasn't it?
It
like
was.
The,
But
like
now-
the unwrapping and like hanging out with
But
friends
then when
to
you
be like,
get that, when you get a CD, when you get a tape, you put that in and it doesn't come out, right? So you go through it, even the bad songs, you kind of go through it, right?
yes, that's
Yeah.
right, yeah.
YouTube, when I got onto YouTube, I stopped listening to entire albums and I would just
Yeah.
listen to singles. So, like when Dhani came out, I didn't like it as much as I liked Dur. So I picked out some of these songs that I liked, like Soniye, Mera Bichhada Yaar, Dhani itself. And then after Dhani, I do not know what albums the Strings have put out. I just know the beautiful singles, some of those singles that have come out, like Titliyan.
Yeah, it was that. It was the music video that they had with Sanjay.
Na Jaane
Dutt.
Kyun.
Na Jaane Kyun. It was Na Jaane Kyun, Mera Bichhada Yaar. It's like those were two of the best music videos that you really think about, right? I mean, Na Jaane Kyun was just big because there were so many different components into what made
Yeah.
that song.
Well, it was in the
And why it
official
was-
India
it was
Spider-Man soundtrack.
Spider-Man
right?
2 soundtrack for India, right?
Yeah.
Where they made that song like somewhat resonant with the plot of Tobey Maguire doing whatever
Yeah.
he did in that movie. But there was that, and then
Whatever you did.
yeah. But it was interesting because apparently the context behind that song that they were writing was about the Iraq War.
Yeah, that's
It
right.
was, yeah. As a matter of fact, I remember there was this event that but before YouTube, you'd still get to watch some videos because like in message boards, somebody would upload it somewhere on a server and then send you a link to it. So me and Omer used to watch it. I remember a video of some of these artists were like doing a little rally for Iraq after 2003, right? So I think there, Faisal Kapadia said, "Ye gana humne Iraq ke logon ke liye banaya hai, that we should think about what they're going through and whatnot." And they did an acoustic version of Na Jaane Kyun, which was beautiful. And
So this is like the mid 2000s, 2004,
Mid-2000s,
yeah.
2005, yeah.
So there's that, which is very deep because you don't really. Sometimes I guess when you look at very different themes for what Pakistani rock artists were really talking about, for them to kind of delve into
Yeah.
international global.
I mean the lyrics, right? Ghar
politics.
jal gaya,
yeah,
dil bhuj gaya, na jaane kyun, right? I mean, it's just like
yeah,
without,
like
without explanation, without
you're-
justification.
without
Right?
justification.
You're due to the mercy of whatever new
Yeah.
imperial powers are doing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
No, by the way, so
Which, but
this
they're
is
not generally associated as like a very political sort of band, are they? like
Not
compared to the
so
other
fast,
ones.
not so fast.
Okay.
Let's get into history a little bit.
Yeah.
Go check it out. By the way, there's in their first album, उसका नाम भी क्या था? Strings था सिर्फ,
I
right?
think so.
Yeah, with lipstick से लिखा होता है strings. Have you seen that cover?
I think I
Pretty
have.
bad.
I was hoping to forget about it, but thank
Yeah.
you.
There's a song on there called Khilona,
Yeah.
which is about child labor.
Mm.
And it is a very strong, lyrically very strong song, musically very powerful,
Really?
And then उसके बोल बड़े प्यारे थे. शाम ढले जो घर लौटता है, ये वो खिलौना है जो रोज टूटता है.
Mm.
जमाने के रश में खड़ा है और गुजरते वक्त से पूछता है, गुजरते वक्त से पूछता है,
Yeah.
ये क्या है, ये क्यों है, कोई बताए मुझे बताए.
You're gonna have to come up with a translation for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will, but we're not gonna cover it here.
We'll put it on the comment section, man.
You're right, and that's interesting because I feel like in the 80s and 90s, like child labor was a political issue, and now all of a
Could be,
sudden
yeah.
I don't see that as like a prominent thing in Pakistan.
I mean, there's people talking about it still,
Yeah, I'm
but
sure.
I think it's probably one of those things where like it's been going on for so long, people could be like desensitized to it, or
Yeah,
it's just like a broken record, maybe,
yeah,
who knows, dude. But I mean, going back to Strings, they have that. They had political messages. They had and some deep philosophical stuff too. There's a song from the second album, जो बड़ा मजे का है. It's called I forgot what it's called, but it's about self-reflection. ठीक है, तो उसके lyrics बड़े मजे के थे उसमें कि आज मैं दिन भर क्यों I forgot, but it's
Sure, yeah.
one of them is like कमरे के कोने में बैठता हुआ पंखे को तकता रहा तन्हाई कहती थी नादा हूँ तो मैं तन्हाई पे हंसता गया. So kind of like जैसे Vital Signs का गाना है ना मैं चुप रहा.
Yeah.
The soul searching songs.
Yeah.
That's what that song was like, and it was from the second album, and it was actually pretty brilliant. So when I criticize the first two albums, I'm not criticizing them all because of the lyrical content. It's just the production content was kind of lacking. And Faisal Kabadia was not a phenomenal singer back then as he is now.
As he is now. So did he learn over time, do you think?
I have no idea what he did, but
well, that's interesting to me because it's like
now.
well, so I mean, let's talk about the band members, right? So Faisal Kabadia, like you said, and Bilal Maqsood, who is actually Anwar Maqsood's son, right? And Anwar Maqsood has been involved in like the entertainment business forever.
Since the black and white days.
Which, by the way, I'm going to keep bringing this up, and I'd be interested to hear what Zawar's thoughts are as well, is that this class issue keeps popping up, right? I mean, because these are often privileged, urban, Pakistani youth who have a lot of resources at their disposal.
Well, you've looked into that, right? I mean, you guys are more intellectually...
well, I mean, he's the son of a pretty established entertainer, right? I mean, and he has access to these spaces in ways that, others don't. Which also, goes to show you that they ended up taking over Coke Studio after a while, right? I mean, and by the way, how do you feel about that transition? I mean, after Strings took over, we don't have to make this a positive
from
podcast.
Rohel to Strings.
Yeah.
Honestly, I thought it was pretty good, and it was still a continuation of like. Oh wow, this is still up to par.
The original sort of Hayat production.
Yeah, it had more of a pop vibe to a lot of different things, and you'd start to see like sometimes, I guess later on down the line, you'd start to see maybe a redundancy between some of the artists and what some projects they were doing. So, like,
well, you see a redundancy overall throughout the entire industry, don't you?
Yeah.
So is that how you see it now? Like you
absolutely.
Can we assume that you did not like that transition?
So no, I did. This is gonna be controversial. Look, I love Coke Studio overall, of course.
Yeah.
But I think what it's done over the past decade or so is that it has stifled creativity, right? I mean, essentially, we are recycling.
That probably goes back to his point where there was redundancy in the artists that were coming out. Like we're seeing Ali Zafar come up.
Page. Yeah.
No, as in like, oh, here's 5 songs with Momina and Mustahsan.
Yeah.
And it's like you have to just enjoy it now because.
But I mean, even some of the more established artists, they keep coming in and they keep recreating the same music that we have listened to since like 1996.
What upset a lot of people was that their relatives started coming in. So Sajad Ali's daughter singing. Right. Ali Zafar's brothers coming in, who by the way has no vocal talent. By the way.
That's obviously.
We have this thing like we try not to get too negative about stuff, but like Daniel Zafar, he may be a good model, but I don't see him as a vocalist at all. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are.
My whole thing about the Strings Coke Studio is that they kept the aesthetics level up, right? That did not go down at all.
What do you mean by aesthetics level?
Like it was quality music. It was nice, and it was something that's at a world class level. Like you can actually take it to a world class audience and present it to them, and they'll like it.
So I have a reason. I have a theory as to why I think it is sort of. You're saying it's world class. I don't think it's world class in the sense that we say world class. I think it's very appealable on a popular level, and I think the reason why, especially in India, is because the Urdu is not that sophisticated.
Possibly, but here's the thing.
No, I'm just being very honest here. The Urdu is not very sophisticated.
Tell us how you really feel.
And the Urdu is not that sophisticated. I think across South Asia, I think that's what also sells, right? Because it is readily understandable. Like, अगर अब जुनून जो है वो अल्लामा इकबाल and like sort of Mirza Ghalib ki lyrics इस्तेमाल कर रहा है जो भी है, right? Those things are very sort of Sufiana and that's their thing, right? But the reality, and I'm not, obviously Junoon made it big, right? But I think they were an anomaly. I mean, any other sort of like band who is trying to sort of put out very sophisticated, like essentially a foreign language, it's just not going to appeal in the same way. I mean, if you listen to some of these songs, right, that Strings has, these slow sort of like ballads that they have, it's very unsophisticated, right? Very,
true.
very.
But let me
like,
tell you what
to
I
the
did
point.
like about this transition. For the first time ever, there was a platform of music in Pakistan. Because,
Sure.
like, if you compare to Bollywood, right? You think about Indian music and you'll say Bollywood, because you won't think about their independent artists. Immediately, so Bollywood is a platform where, they can push anything through that pipeline, anything through that industry, and it will get audience, it will get attention, no matter how bad or good it is, right? So in Pakistan now, Coke Studio, it became that household known platform for Pakistani artists.
There's no doubt, yeah.
Right, and I think
And
that
I
was
think it
tremendous,
brought
and it was something that was needed.
Yes.
I mean, maybe
it brought a
came
younger
at
generation back into and allowed them to rediscover.
Right. So I mean,
Music
I would
that otherwise
empathize.
they
Like
wouldn't have
if it came at somebody's expense, I would empathize with them. But I think it was a positive move.
Here's the thing. I mean, I think there are specific things. But number one, Coke Studio basically brought Pakistani music back to the forefront of the entire subcontinent and on a global level in ways that no other project had done prior to that. Because you were starting to see that within that decade, within the mid to late 2000s, this band culture had kind of disintegrated, if we're being honest. There were a lot of bands that you're just not hearing from. So many of the prominent bands from that early Pepsi Battle of the Bands generation had fallen apart. Every single one of them, for that matter, right?
Yeah.
So you had EP had just fallen apart. Fawad Khan became like a superstar,
Yeah.
and
Otto was
he's all doing his own thing.
disintegrated.
That's a whole show by itself, by the way. This
Otto-
whole generation too.
Otto had fallen apart, so you're really starting to see this vacuum, and that like the same artists that were kind of carrying this industry for a decent amount of time were just not there, or they weren't producing quality art to the point where there was something sustainable going on. So Rohil Hayat basically had championed that to a level where it's like there's filling a void here, but you're doing it in an unprecidented way where it's just like covering things in new heights that you never.
So I definitely see that, and
however, but then Rohil basically, I like to think of those different eras in different ways. So Rohil is kind of laying out the foundation, and since we know that he's always been a very spiritual and Sufiana individual, you can start to see that flavor kind of being naturally infused into any of the music that and the arrangements that he was setting up. Whereas you start to see the flavor and the involvement that strings are having whenever they take up too. The reality is if we started to think of it within a historical context, Rohil Hayat's last season there was when he was trying to be a bit more ambitious with the different types of genres that he was trying to like infuse, and I think he even took that season was a bit topsy turvy.
With the foreign Serbian musicians.
Like they flew over to Europe and they were recording their songs there, and it felt like very unorthodox, and
it doesn't have larger appeal. So
it felt hyper experimental, honestly, where it was just like nobody was really vibing with it as much as they were vibing with the previous seasons.
Yeah, it was brilliant in itself, but it just doesn't have that larger appeal with the commercial appeal.
So he left at that point, which I guess he kind of left on a low level, at a low point at that point. So then you start to see strings take in, and naturally they're going to infuse their own genres and their own style, which can be more pop oriented, it can be more ballad oriented. But I think they don't get as much credit as they naturally should, because you can start to see it now when they left. And what was their names? Ali Hamza and that other dude took over.
Yeah.
And the quality just dropped off, and everybody just like abandoned Coke Studio as.
So how long has it been now? The Strings did 3 seasons, right?
They did 4, I think.
4 seasons, okay.
Something of that nature.
Okay, that's good.
And then
what about their successors? How many did they do?
They only did 1, I think they left the project now.
Now I'm afraid that might just kill the whole Coke Studio.
It could potentially,
era.
But we heard rumors that Rohil Hayat is taking the season up again, so you know.
That'd be nice, yeah. Now, by the way, this is not the first thing that connects Strings to Rohil. You know, going back to the 90s. You know why the first Strings broke up, right? Because these guys, all of them actually, had to go abroad to study, further education and stuff. But then as soon as they came back, they didn't get back into music right away. They wanted to, I don't know what they wanted to do, but they ended up working for Rohil Hayat at that time. Rohil Hayat had this media company called Pyramid Productions. So they both got... I think the story goes back even further. What happened is, as Pepsi came around, they gave Vital Signs endorsements, right? And then they were looking for more artists. And something happened where Strings got passed up on a Pepsi endorsement, and Awaz eventually got it. I don't know the whole story, but this is something I've heard in Strings interview. But I guess that's maybe when they broke up and went up to Steady and whatnot. But when they came back, they worked with Rohel in Pyramid Productions for a while.
And their style definitely changed after they came back. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it. I'm trying to look for the word. I can't really figure out, but a lot of it is very sort of. Like they really know how to paint a picture, don't they? Like visuals, but also like at the same time, like retain some expressionism.
Interestingly enough, because Anwar Maqsood is a painter too.
Really,
he's their lyricist.
Okay,
so
there you go. Yeah, so they're very vivid in the imagery that they sort of like construct, right? I mean, dur se koi aaye.
Right.
But nonetheless, they're still talking about sort of like the
Suraj
human condition.
Yeah.
But they're still like talking about the human condition and emotion.
Right.
They're doing it through like a sort of elaboration of like imagery and like that's how they use that's the rhetoric that they use in order to be able to express what they're trying to say. It's actually quite wonderful. And I mean, it's the same thing with Mera Betraya, right?
Right.
That song, I mean, if it doesn't like conjure up sort of heavy, images in your mind, I don't know what does.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing, man. And you know what? As people, I think these guys are very lovable too. So I thought until I started watching Pepsi Battle of the Bands and Bilal Masood was judging. No, but that's all good too.
So I met Bilal Masood.
Oh, did you?
On that same trip in 2004.
Okay.
On a separate occasion.
Yeah.
And he was actually sitting with you'll be surprised. Actually, I don't know if you'll be surprised. He was sitting with Ali Noor.
Really? Okay.
And Gumby. And then with Bilal Masood and I think a couple of their friends. And so Ali Noor was the friendliest out of that entire bunch. Bilal Masood and Gumby were heavy in conversation about something. But incidentally...
he knows to argue, right?
What's that?
He knows to argue, right? He loves to argue.
Right, but it was also telling because if you remember the other bands that I mentioned in that show at Bahari Auditorium, Strings and Nudie were not part of that lineup.
Okay.
So it made me think at the time that like maybe these bands
was
have
Gumby
a little
playing
bit
then? He must have played for Junoon.
Who was?
Gumby? If he was there, but then maybe Jay Dinamo was playing for Junoon at that time.
Might be right. I can't remember that far back. It's like been 15 years, but it made me wonder like what is their relationship like to these other bands because Junoon was headlining, Call was playing EP, Mizrab,
right?
But Strings and Nudie were not playing.
Right.
Incidentally, I did catch Nudie at another venue afterwards, towards the latter half of the summer.
Live concert.
But yeah, Bilal Masood did not seem interested in talking to me, which is fine. Hey Bilal, what's up?
Hit me up, bro.
Or not. But no, nonetheless, your music is great. Yeah, I mean...
No, they're great folk, man. Faisal Kamali he has a great on-screen personality, too.
They did, but it's been a very long time. Last time I think they came was maybe almost a decade ago.
So I'm saying on-screen personality.
Yeah, remember they played a show in New York?
Oh, they played in New York?
It was like the Jackson Heights area, I think.
Okay, yeah.
But that's about it, honestly.
Strings, huh? They've never come to LA.
I don't think so.
Man, I would kill to see...
Not to my recollection.
I think they've come to the Bay Area.
That might make sense.
Well, I mean, they kind of transitioned even beyond Cook Studio recently. Like the last year, they had Strings 30 as an entire project.
Yeah.
There's
some good songs come out of them.
One thing I do want to say is that maybe we can have this discussion at a later time, but out of all of the different bands that have come out, and I was talking bands, which one has been the best to come out with like Qawmi sort of like
Mili Naghme. Not Strings.
And well, so you're right, but I will say that an honorable mention is to be had for Method Kunga because that's.
Okay, I take it back. Yeah. Okay.
Is that in the 2000?
And they've also
I immediately thought of
they had another one for like the World Cup.
See, that was not a good song.
Which, by the way, while I was at the World Cup in England, they did play. Although they played Little Pakistan like 99% of the time, but they did play Weo Weo, whatever that song's called, a couple times.
It was that, and then they were also involved in, like in the mid '90s when you had those Pepsi things. Remember, Del Mange, what is it?
Yeah. Well, I think that was after.
I know, but all of them were in that.
But that was post Dur.
It was Harun was in it
because they were back in the music scene.
Yeah, Junaid Jamshed was in that.
And Harun was a solo artist at that time.
And then Strings were in it too, actually. Bilal Maqsood did a verse or two when they were all doing that same one.
Yeah. I think it was their production. Because they produced videos for Junaid Jamshed. They were directing Usra Parga video. I think Bilal Maqsood made that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because they're in the media business.
Yeah.
And then working with Rohel and Pyramid Productions, so they have that. And, they're just amazing artists.
Yeah.
And 30 years, man. Generation first.
30 years.
There's only, what, 2 Generation 1 bands left now?
Still
Junoon
kicking.
Junoon and
I will say, I
Masters?
think,
No,
has,
I mean,
Faisal judged on Battle of the Bands?
yeah, he does.
He does, right? He's way better than Bilal.
He's very
I'm just
mellow.
gonna put that out
He's
there.
very mellow. Bilal
He is
just has
very
to bring that. I think it's probably a production thing where somebody has to be the, Simon
Yeah.
Cowell.
I guess
For the group.
there's two thoughts that are coming to mind. Number one, one thing I guess like when you actually listen to their music, how well Faisal and Bilal actually complement each other is something that's really worth noting, because you have Faisal has, I think he has maybe arguably the best deep register among any other Pakistani singer, like maybe all time.
Yeah.
That's
And
Yeah.
Bilal has a little bit of a higher.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a great compliment.
Which,
But you
by
don't
the
see
way,
them harmonize much.
you never see like this, like sort of like, or sense this like jealousy between them. And
Oh, yeah,
they
yeah.
do actually, like when Bilal wants to sing, like he sings, like he
Yeah.
sings on songs.
But I rarely see them harmonize, like 2-part harmonies.
It's usually them having their own parts,
Yeah.
right? So it's like the most recognizable right now, within maybe last year or two, was Sajni.
That was all
right?
Faisal.
It was all
And then
Faisal
Bilal's
until
part in there.
Bilal did an interlude. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What was the
great
second?
song, man.
What
The
was
second one, right? You really like we talked a little bit about in the past about how every single band that we've seen within Pakistani music history has broken up at some shape or form. Whereas Strings is probably the only one that like whatever beef that they did have, they got rid of it initially in the beginning, and they've stuck together ever since.
I mean, I also think they got rid of those
If they had
guys
any
too.
beef,
right.
I don't really think
Yeah,
they
if they
had.
even did, like you
Yeah.
never really
Because
hear too much
Faisal
about it.
Kapadia is also the son of Latif Kapadia,
I don't know.
the
who that is.
famous TV star
Oh,
who has passed on.
there you go.
Yeah.
Circling
he's
right
worked
back to
on-
my argument
Yeah, no,
about
I mean,
urban youth in Pakistan.
but I guess that's the thing. It's like there's something worth acknowledging in the fact that like in music history where every single major group has broken up and just like you've waited more than a decade for them to return together to prominence, and like Junoon, or even Otto, for example, right? Like they just came back recently
ये
for
रोने वाली बातें आएगी.
right, but it's like
Final
what's
Signs never got.
Ugly
Right.
as
They tried, it failed.
but something worth acknowledging is that these are the guys who they're the only band in Pakistani history to stick together for 30 years straight, which is pretty special.
Yeah, pretty incredible.
All right, let's wind it up. Give me your top 3 string songs.
मेरा बिछड़ा यार,
Perfect.
मैं तो देखूंगा, and yeah, सर की है ये पहाड़.
All right, Zawar, your top 3 strings.
In no particular order. ना जाने क्यों मैं तो देखूंगा मेरा बिछड़ा यार.
Isn't that like the hardest question you
I
can
know, it really is.
Because
I mean,
a lot of
'cause
strings,
he just said ना जाने क्यों, and I'm like, what? Yeah.
a lot of string songs is just like on the same plateau, right?
And also Titlian and then like
Titaniya
so
is-
many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now check out this one song they did with an Indian artist. It's called Pal.
Yes.
Have you heard that?
I've heard
it
of
wasn't
that.
just that.
That is a beautiful song.
Yep. They also did Zinda Hoon. That's
Yeah,
a
that
great
was
song.
a great
Zinda
song
was a
too.
beautiful.
I mean, even though like I'm not a
Also,
huge
the one
fan of Pakistani bands going out to like play for
the one they did with
soundtracks,
Atif Aslam, Abu Khud Kuch Karna Padega.
That was a
That
decent
was
song too.
incredible,
Yeah.
actually, yeah. No, the music video for that is very
All right,
powerful.
We need
signing
probably a
off.
whole season series of podcasts where like you can just get your heart out about anything Indian that you don't like.
That was not meant to be made public. I disown whatever Anikazi has said.
No, we all love
have,
Indians.
we have Anikazi.
We got Zawar Jaffrey here, the Phenom. And then Hamad Alam. And thank you for listening. Till the next episode, so long.
All right, y'all.
Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz.
Love is